Fostering Leadership is made possible by the generous donations of the Foster Foundation and Artie and Sue Burke. Hi, I'm Nick Perleros, your host for Fostering Leadership. This week we look at the power of followership and the integral connection with leadership. We can agree that all leaders are followers, but can all followers be leaders? How can our leaders encourage insurrection every day to make sure followers are leading when they need to? We'll look at the challenges and strengths of the nurse-doctor dynamic, the culture of the no people, leadership styles on and off the sports field, and a Fortune 500 view of followership. Okay, let's get started. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. When Thomas Paine uttered that phrase some 200 years ago, he couldn't have imagined that it would still be a part of the lexicon used in 21st century business. While leaders are the more obvious power brokers, sometimes it's the followers, often those with little or no specific authority, who wield just as much or even more influence when it's critical to get things done. Indeed, throughout history, many followers have led without authority. In this week's history lesson, we take a look back at one of the very best of that breed, someone who literally changed the world. Eleanor Roosevelt was born to great wealth and privilege, though that couldn't save her from the heartache of losing both parents by age 10. As a result, Eleanor grew up insecure and starved for attention. She thought of herself as unattractive, yet at age 14 she showed maturity beyond her years and a will strong enough to overcome any physical shortcomings.
No matter how plain a woman may be, if truth and loyalty are stamped upon her face, all will be attracted to her.
Her prescient words foretold her future greatness as a follower and then a leader. She would later become, in the words of President Harry Truman, the First Lady of the world. At age 20, she married Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Together and separately, the Roosevelts became central figures in world events of the mid-20th century. Eleanor steadfastly supported her husband as he battled a disease that ravaged his body. And despite her shyness and reluctance to take center stage, she often made appearances and speeches on Franklin's behalf. Her evident compassion for the many not born to privilege and her willingness to speak out contributed to her growing sphere of influence.
We gain strength and courage and confidence by each experience in which we really stop to look fear in the face. We must do that which we think we cannot.
In 1933, FDR was elected to his first of 4 terms as president, and Eleanor, with no formal authority, set about redefining the role of First Lady. She had a keen understanding of the challenges facing the average American and was able to convey those to the president, who was notoriously out of touch with the average person on the street. So was Eleanor a follower? Perhaps by one narrow definition. But followers can initiate based on a leader's agenda and perhaps over time with the agenda they are championing. They can lead up and even become leaders. Eleanor worked tirelessly in supporting FDR's New Deal. She broke new ground as a vocal advocate for civil rights and women's rights, again with no formal authority to do so. In 1945, when FDR died in office during his unprecedented 4th term, Eleanor's drive only picked up steam. That same year, she joined the board of the NAACP. The next year, she was elected to head the United Nations Human Rights Commission. She was moving from having no formal authority to a much broader mandate for authority in these leadership roles. She would later chair President Kennedy's Presidential Commission on the Status of Women. Eleanor Roosevelt worked tirelessly, and often with little or no authority, to better the lives of millions of people the world over. After 9 years as a free safety in the NFL, Brian Russell is now playing for a different team in the world of business. As a Foster MBA student, Brian has discovered new approaches to leadership, strategic thinking, and teamwork.
My experiences with leadership and how it worked within a team are for the most part within a locker room environment. And you have quarterbacks and really the ultimate leaders within that locker room, but they're not always the ones doing the barking. Sometimes they're listening to other people who want to voice their opinion, and then they have to accept a different perspective. My NFL experience absolutely affects how I see leadership, followership. I experienced both sides of that as an NFL player. I came in undrafted, very much on the bottom of the food chain, so to speak, and so completely a follower, and had to understand how to do what people were asking me to do even when I didn't agree with it. If you talk to some of my teammates here at the business school, they'll probably say it was a tough transition for me. And towards the end of my football career, I was very much the leader and got to make a lot of decisions. So transitioning here, and you realize people aren't listening to you the same way, it is a little awkward at first, but I had a lot to learn, and I didn't have the skill set that really is required in business school when I walked into the building. So I accepted that, sometimes grudgingly, and I think I'm better for it. Finding out how to allow everybody to get their input in, including mine, usually makes the result better. So it's collaborative now. So not used to that, but I think that's the business environment, and so it's great for me. The learning curve is in a risk-free environment in school, and that's great. That's maybe the best part of school for me. In the NFL, leadership is very hierarchical, so you have kind of a military drill sergeant who tells you what to do, and you have to follow it to the letter of the law. In school, it's very collaborative, so even though there is a leader, somebody who makes the ultimate decision, everybody has great value to add. And so as a leader, you have to understand how to capture all that value, and then as a follower, you have to understand where you can contribute and where sometimes your ideas are going to get set aside. They don't fit the big picture, but you still give your best effort and throw out your best to hope that that fits. So in the business environment today, there's a lot of shared leadership and collaboration. I think you see that on the management and executive teams of any company. You have a CFO, a CEO, a COO, and those are a lot of fancy titles to basically say shared leadership. And those people have to delegate below them. And if somebody's trying to wear all the hats, a CEO for example, it's going to be a mess. So you have to trust those around you, and ultimately great collaboration within an organization is going to produce the best.
Stay tuned for more of Fostering Leadership.
The University of Washington's Foster Center for Leadership and Strategic Thinking, where we balance rigor and relevance in designing and testing leadership game simulations, training ethical and authentic leadership, and examining strategic healthcare transformation.
The Foster School of Business offers multiple highly ranked MBA programs to fit your schedule and career goals. Compare options and learn more at foster.washington.edu.
These days, healthcare is in the news all the time, but what we don't hear is very much about the working relationships of nurses and doctors. This is a very interesting and complex leadership followership dynamic. We caught up with Kathleen Bartholomew, nursing professional, published author, and highly sought-after speaker and consultant, to dig a little deeper into the followership issues in the hospital setting.
The concept of followership for me is more of I'm a member of a great team, because it's sometimes I as a leader follow as well. The team is a concept that we are all working towards. And the hardest thing I think that we all face is our archaic or our old ideas of what our roles used to be. For example, it's very difficult for some physicians to receive feedback. And in a team, you have to be free to ask questions and never be afraid. That's hard to do. It's equally as difficult for nurses, especially a few nurses who have been around for a long time, to speak up and to venture an opinion when in the past that opinion has not been valued. Speaking up is the most important thing that any caregiver can do for the patient. Communication is the #1 cause of error. Over 80% of all errors, it's even higher I believe, are caused by communication problems. 22 patients die an hour. Half of those due to hospital-acquired infections, the other half due to errors that we could have prevented. And the most critical relationship, partnership, it should be a partnership, is between the physician and the nurse. And it's critical that both of them can speak up at any time. If I'm a nurse, I have a perspective that the physician doesn't. I have information that he can't have. And by nature of my job, I see trends. I can see the blood pressure creeping up. And so, or the pain creeping up, or the blood pressure trending down. And so I have to feel free to approach him and say, look, I'm a little concerned. This blood pressure has been increasing over the last few hours. And I have to have a relationship with the physician that is open, that is safe, where there's a level of trust that I can approach him at any time, or her at any time. In the current leadership-fellowship relationship that is standard in most hospitals, the physician and the nurse do not ever meet in the same room and talk to the patient. And I believe that in 10 or 20 years, hopefully in 10 years, that we'll find this obsolete and unbelievable that there was ever a time in healthcare when the two most important people that were designing the care and implementing the care and planning the care never sat down with the patient every single solitary day and said, what is our goal for the day? What are you worried about? What can we do? What are your concerns? Where are we going? I think that's the day I look forward to.
On this week's segment of The Desk, Richard Tate of Boom Boom Brands and Phyllis Campbell of JP Morgan Chase share their personal experiences and views on the topic, the power of followership.
Welcome to this segment of The Desk. The title today is called The Power of Followership. Interesting term, so Richard, I'd love to hear your reaction.
Yeah, I struggled with the term originally, but then I remembered when I've really felt that incredible sense of belonging and feeling that sense of followership. And for me, that happened when I was 22 years old. I went to work for Microsoft.
Wow.
And I
What was
remember...
I'm just curious, your employee number?
I was probably 23 or 2400.
Okay.
It was
Yeah,
amazing.
early number.
Yeah, 1988. Yep. And I joined that organization and that culture with such a sense of passion and conviction around the mission, which was to put a computer on every desktop in every home running Microsoft software. And I can remember feeling this sense of, yes, that's what I want to pursue with everything I had inside of me, and be that follower, and believed in the leadership and the cause, and pursued it with the passion, everything, all the passion I had inside of me.
Yeah,
what about
that's
you?
fantastic. Well, I struggled a bit with the term myself, and I guess I look at it slightly differently than maybe you've looked at it. You talk about the cause and maybe following a leader. I think really the way I look at it, it's kind of a dynamic circle, that a leader can be a follower, and likewise a follower can be a leader. And sometimes it's just a fluid process that goes on in great organizations. I mean, example is that I would give you is my current company, JP Morgan Chase, who I work for, and Jamie Dimon, our CEO, is somebody who's always lauded for his leadership. And the reason is because he would describe himself as a learner. He learns from us as colleagues, he admits his mistakes, he talks openly about that, and he really says he seeks out the truth tellers. So he really listens to people so that he can learn and continuously improve. So I think that's just a good example for me of somebody who really does both the leader, follower, but I think I would say more of a learner.
Yeah, I think that continuum that you're describing of being both leader and follower is very, very important and powerful within cultures. At Cranium, we created an office environment that celebrated our cause and our mission and was actually felt like a game. And with the philosophy that it was the team with the best complement of skills that was going to win. So many times we would be both a leader and a follower, but we created an environment that made people comfortable with both of those roles.
So it's a very empowering culture as well.
Yep.
That's terrific.
So our tips from the desk are around the concept of the power of followership are: 1, create a very clear mission and a sense of cause and purpose that makes it easy to follow. 2, create a context within which people feel empowered and can move between the
leader and the follower.
Right,
and I think it can be a dynamic circle always, so a leader can be the follower and vice versa. And it can be situational, but in any event, I do think that we ought to think of it in a dynamic sense.
It's a good point. That's it from the desk.
Thanks for joining us.
In this week's Q&A, we met with Bruce Volio, Director of the Center for Leadership and Strategic Thinking at the University of Washington's Foster School of Business. Bruce, author of the recently released The Know People, sat down with me to chat about followership. Bruce, tell me a little bit about the title of your new book, The Know People. Who are the Know People?
Well, off the top of my head, I'd like to say that they're really close friends of leaders, in the sense that having people around you that are willing, when all the stakes are really high, to say, no, not the right way. Those are the no people. They're not the people who say, no, I won't do it, no, I don't want to try. But I chose the term because I wanted to bring people's attention to the fact that a follower who's willing to say no is really worth their weight in gold, because they can keep you from going off cliffs that you don't realize are there.
How do you define followership?
Well, followership, like leadership, has many different flavors. So followership, in my view, can be a very active form of helping leaders get what they need to do done. It also could be passive, where they sit back and wait for the leaders to tell them what to do. So it can be anything within that range. The very active, proactive follower, no, don't do that because you're in danger. 2, the follower just says, I'm going to wait to hear what you say.
Is followership the same across industries?
No, I don't think it is. I think the fundamentals are the same, basic values and principles. But in certain industries, followers are challenged to speak up and take a position. And so in an industry where there's a high degree of threat, security, something that could happen that could hurt someone, the follower has to have the responsibility to step up. There's a critical element in terms of followers stepping up and saying, look, there's something happening here that might put a patient in danger. And so a follower in a situation is responsible for stepping up and reducing the risk. In other industries where in sales, for example, the followers maybe are not putting the client at risk if they're saying something about the clothing or whatever the retail sells. But nevertheless, the followers have to be active and engaged with the customer. It's just a different level of risk. But in most cases, the active follower is the more effective follower.
What's the importance of followership?
You know, without followership, there's no fun in leading. You have to have people who are willing to step up and do the things you want them to do, guide them to do, envision for them to do. But at the same time, followership is not just being a subordinate. Followers can be leading when the leader isn't there. Followers can be guiding other people and developing them if the leader doesn't have time for them to do that. So for me, excellent followership is an active engagement in getting to where you want to be in terms of an objective.
Is the nature of followership changing?
Not only is followership changing, so is leadership. So let me give you a couple of examples. We expect followers in organizations now at almost every level to execute on what would be the strategy of an organization. And in fact, the followers have to know what that strategy is and have to be the representation of that strategy at every level. So, whether I'm in a department store, whether I'm in a military combat unit, whether I'm a police officer, I have to carry that strategy with me. And so anybody at any level today represents the organization. And that's different. We usually relied upon leaders to be the representatives and the spokesperson. Today it can be anybody blogging, anybody who's responding to a blog at any point, any time. And I think that's put a great challenge on the leadership and followership system.
Stay tuned for more of Fostering Leadership.
When you're at a crossroads in your career or in your life, you have to look at what's on the other side of that.
I was looking at where is the next step in my career. The future business world will need leaders. There are going to be opportunities that come across your path. What's uncertain is will you be prepared for those opportunities?
You just need the passion for your career, for a better life.
With the TM MBA program from the Foster Business School, you can take that next step.
Up next, a Pay It Forward mentorship story from the Foster School of Business. Mikiku Umihara started out as an engineer at the Boeing company. Then about 5 years in, she began to realize she might not want to be an engineer for the rest of her life. But she wanted to stay at Boeing. Her urge to make a change in her career led her to the Foster School of Business, and her mentor, Roe Gansarski, Chief Customer Officer for Boeing Training and Flight Services.
I wanted to be able to leverage myself. I didn't think that I was going to be an engineer for the rest of my life. So I wanted to be exposed to business, to kind of open my eyes at what kind of opportunities are out there.
So what are the other projects you're working on?
Immediately I have PGA, which
okay.
I didn't really, I guess it's a profit growth analysis is what it stands for, but I'm not entirely sure what it means when.
So PGA, it stands for Profitable Growth for All. The PGA means there's already a campaign in place, we're about to make an offer, and we want everyone's approval that this offer is okay. So it's actually a more advanced stage of the campaign.
Okay. I was introduced to Roy, and when things start to click in terms of, this is how the things that I've learned in my classes apply to the real world, is when I really narrowed in and I really focused on I'm ready to make a career change.
She's moved from a very results-oriented, black and white, at least in my opinion, environment from an engineer perspective where things are very clear. And she's moved into a marketing role where marketing is all about messaging, brand, and it's a very fluid type of work where there is no black and white. I think it's great. The fact that she had a goal and pursued it and is now living it I think that's fantastic. You don't see that a lot.
I wanted to be able to talk to somebody who can, I guess, speak my language, who was familiar with the corporate culture, who was familiar with what I was dealing with and going through every day.
And here I thought you chose me because of my charming personality.
That too, of course.
It's the leaders that you look up to that will help define how you lead eventually. It's the managers who you don't look up to as leaders who will help define how you don't behave in the future. I don't think you can really have a leader and a follower, a mentor and a mentee, if both parties aren't learning and aren't advancing together as part of a team. You're really only a single member and you're no longer a leader, or a follower for that matter.
I think Roy has the ability to kind of come down to your level and look at things in your perspective. He doesn't want to just lead, he wants to be able to kind of teach you so that you can become a leader.
This week, our Business Leader feature story spotlights retired Boeing CEO Phil Condit. Phil reflects on his own leadership style as it relates to followership, and he shares his great appreciation for the value of teamwork.
I think as a leadership style, I tried very hard to involve other people. What I found was far better to say, we've got a very important decision to make. I'd like to hear what all of you think before we even begin to arrive at a decision, and then start almost randomly in the room. Tell me what you think. People arrive at a consensus because they've been able to speak their piece, they've listened to other people, and it becomes pretty obvious what the decision is. I struggle with the idea of followership as a unique concept. I think everybody in an organization plays both roles all of the time. They are a leader and a follower. You can be a member of a crew on the factory floor, and there will be times when you actually have a leadership responsibility. It may be that you're the one that leads in keeping the workplace clean. There are going to be a lot of times where you have a followership role. The supervisor in that team is going to say, here's what we need to get done, and you're going to need to be able to say, right on. You have a responsibility of saying, boy, I think we could do this better another way, but you also have that responsibility of being a follower. That happens at every single level. I watched a lot of people struggle with the idea that one of these days I can be the leader, and now I don't have to follow anymore, and it never happens. You know, if you're the CEO of a company, you've got a board of directors, you've got shareholders, and there is a followership that has to be part of that role. And so each person is going to have to carry both of these responsibilities, both being a follower and a leader. In any hierarchical organization, you're trying to understand that leadership occurs at all levels and following occurs at all levels. And understanding your role, understanding how you can impact the success of an organization very much involves understanding where you are and your role as a follower and as a leader. If you've got a leader that believes in engagement and involvement, that believes deeply in good followership and leadership at all levels, being able to listen, you can get very exciting organizational results. It's why I think teams can be so powerful, because you can actually watch leadership move around in a team. And it isn't the structure that is picking the leader. It is, if we're doing this activity, this person carries that leadership role. We move to a different activity, there's another leadership role, and it moves throughout the team. I had a good friend, a teacher, who gave me a button once that said, none of us is as smart as all of us. And it's something that I came to believe very, very deeply. That if you could put a team together, if you can bring people of different skills, different thoughts, different experiences, and let them collaborate, the result is powerful. You don't sort of look and say there's one person doing the design and everybody else is just following. It is a collaborative process. It requires respect of each person, but the fundamental goes back to none of us is as smart as all of us.
Time now for our quiz. Let's find out what you've learned and what you think you know. One of the most important missing elements in how we focus on leadership is A, technology, B, followers, C, organizational structure, or D, experience. Leaders who develop followers to be what are called the know people, A, motivate followers who can execute rapidly, B, motivate followers to perform beyond expectations, C, motivate followers to challenge their direction, or D, motivate followers to hold back on their opinions. With regards to the leadership exhibited by nurses, we know that A, nurses work diligently to develop nurses into leaders, B, nurses work diligently to develop collective leadership, C, nurses are hesitant to step up and assume a leadership role, or D, many nurses are now becoming CEOs of large hospital systems. The best leaders suggest that A, to learn how to lead, one must start as a follower. B, to learn how to follow, one must learn what it means to be wrong. C, to learn how to share leadership, one must accept extreme sacrifices. Or D, to learn how to run an organization, one must start at the bottom. Go to our website, take our quiz, and see how you do. Each week we'll have a new quiz on leadership based on the theme of our show. Well, that's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. Next week we'll take a step into the future, as imperfect as it may be. It'll be a chance to explore new and developing leadership models and see where we might be headed. Our stories include the excitement of new ideas in the blue ocean strategy, the growth of a dynamic team model for healthcare and hospitals, a global collaboration to keep our planet healthy, and a step into the future with serious games. All these stories and more when we see you next week on Fostering Leadership. Fostering Leadership was made possible by the generous donations of the Foster Foundation and Artie and Sue Burke. To find out more about Fostering Leadership, go to our website, uwtv.org/fosteringleadership.